So, recently I decided to play through the Witcher game series. I got into the series with the third game, The Wild Hunt, which I easily consider one of the best RPG games I have ever played, even to this day. Obviously, I started with Witcher 1, and that was that was a whiplash because I came from the third game and went to the first game. And if you've played the two, you will know how vastly different the games are. Everything from visuals to the combat to the overall feel was representing of a completely different era. But that experience made something very clear to me. And that is, the game has obviously made massive leaps and bounds in progress between The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 3. To understand how massive that improvement was, you have to start with the original Witcher game. The Witcher, developed by CD Projekt RED, marked the debut of a landmark RPG series, adapting Sapkowski's fantasy novels into an interactive experience that prioritized narrative depth over conventional gameplay. Released on October 3, 2007 for Microsoft Windows, the game was created by the Polish studio, largely unknown on the global scale at that time, with only prior experience from titles like the Gothic localizations. At launch, Sapkowski's Witcher book series enjoyed popularity primarily in Poland and Eastern Europe, with limited Western recognition prior to the game's release, positioning it as a risky adaptation of a niche source material. The game's core identity emerged from its emphasis on moral ambiguity, political intrigue, and monster hunting, setting it apart from action-heavy RPGs of the era like Oblivion. CDPR's decision to pursue a faithful adaptation stemmed from founder Marcin Nowinski's fandom of the books, leading to direct collaboration with Sapkowski, despite the novel's regional fame. Budget constraints shaped its PC-exclusive focus, leveraging keyboard inputs to precise combat timing rather than controller-friendly designs. These choices established the series' emphasis on player agency through branching narratives and consequence-heavy decisions, influencing subsequent titles like The Witcher 2 and 3. So, the game starts out with Geralt of Rivia awakening with amnesia, which is a great way to introduce a character to people unfamiliar with the lore from the books. This soft reboot allowed players to experience his Witcher prowess organically, amid a plot based on political issues in the Witcher world. I didn't notice this when I was playing, but looking back, I loved how the quests involved great choices, like aiding non-humans or humans in a racially charged society, and there was no absolute good or evil choices. It really allowed players to experience a world of the game without restrictions or the thoughts of having the perfect outcome. The game was exclusively on PC at launch, with a keyboard-centric combat and a rhythm-based sword system. The combat at first made me lose so much composure, because it was so different from anything I had ever played before, especially with the manual targeting and stance switching. It also didn't help that at first I skipped through all the instructions on how the combat worked, but that's not my fault. The game should be more straightforward. The game's writing shone through mature themes of racism, addiction, and prostitution, with the atmosphere of the world being amplified by the dynamic weather, day-night cycles, and emergent events, delivering a very immersed world, while also being faithful to the book's tone with Geralt's sarcasm and grit. The biggest criticism I would have for The Witcher 1 would be that the combat is one of the most frustrating things for me to have ever experienced. But on the other side, at least it is different and not copy pasta. The game does look dated. When I first booted it up, I thought it was early 2000s game, with its low poly models and texture popping. Let's just say that it's no Crisis, but that makes sense because the game began development in 2003 and wasn't trying to push the graphical boundaries of PC gaming. The Witcher crystallized the series' identity in a positive light, even with the poor combat gameplay, proving that the Witcher series had some potential, but there was a lot to be improved upon in the overall experience. And so they did, with The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, released in 2011 by CDPR, marked a pivotal evolution from its predecessor, The Witcher, by introducing substantial technical and narrative advancements that positioned it as a contender in the AAA RPG landscape. Developed initially for PC and later ported to the Xbox 360, the game underwent a full graphical overhaul from the first game, delivering enhanced lighting, detailed textures, and dynamic weather effects for unprecedented visual immersion. This shift was complemented by a console release on the Xbox 360 in April 2012, broadening its accessibility beyond PC gamers and requiring CDPR to optimize the game for controller-based play. The game became markedly more cinematic, with motion capture cutscenes, advanced facial animations, and a sophisticated camera system that heightened immersion during dialogues and combat sequences. These changes reflected CDPR's ambition to elevate the series' production values while maintaining its mature storytelling rooted in Sapkowski's novels. The game continued to center on Geralt, who is regaining his fragmented memories after the events of the first game, propelling him into a web of political intrigue amid the assassinations of northern kings. Political conflict emerges as a core driver, with Temeria's succession crisis and the looming war between Nilfgaard and the North, which is similar to the first game's thematic focus on power struggles, moral ambiguity, and consequences of neurality in a fractured world. Geralt's amnesia resolution unfolds gradually through flashbacks and conversations, restoring his identity as the White Wolf, while implicating him in the murder of a king, forcing alliances with spies, sorceress, and kingslayers. The plot pivots around assassinations escalating into full-scale war, with player choices influencing faction outcomes, like supporting Temeria's throne claimants or Nilfgaardian agents. The game's branching stands out as one of RPG's history's most ambitious, with a single major decision in the prologue drastically altering Acts 2 and 3. This splits the game into distinct paths. Lorvette's route explores guerrilla warfare in the forests, while Roach's leads to the political summit with different quests, bosses, and endings. Over 30% of the game's content becomes inaccessible per playthrough, with 4 major endings and numerous minor variations affecting romances, betrayals, and epilogue. Which I would say sounds like a cool concept, and it is, I guess, different, but it's never my favorite thing because you're missing out on content. And you would have to replay the whole game to experience another part of the game. But if the game is so good, no one would really care. Unfortunately, I didn't even notice this was a thing, so that's 30% of the game I don't even know about. That's unfortunate. Combat received a real-time overhaul, blending swordplay, signs, bombs, and oils into a tactical layer system where positioning, vigor management, and preparation matters. Let's be real, all I care about is the swordplay and the signs, and that's all I did. I really couldn't care about all the mixology in the Witcher games. The combat is completely different from the first game, but I felt like it was a bit too complicated. The ideas are great and the improvement is way better, but it felt like there was too much to do when it came to the combat. But that could just be me. Despite innovations with the combat and overall gameplay, the world shrank compared to The Witcher's open regions, limiting free roaming monster hunts and prioritizing story-gated progression. I wasn't a fan of this change, but I can only assume the reason they did this was because of the game's performance, and by cutting things down to linear hubs, it helped reduce open world issues, especially with the massive graphical update between the games. However, despite all of those issues, The Witcher 2 demonstrated CDPR's capacity to rival Western AAA RPGs like Skyrim, taking risks with mature content, deep choice consequence systems, and no hand-holding tutorials that most studios avoided. They should not avoid that. They should not do that. Let's not do that. Not do that. What's wrong with hand-holding people at the beginning of a game? Having sold over 2 million copies by 2013, The Witcher 2 paved the way for The Witcher 3's open-world success and establishing CDPR as a narrative-driven powerhouse. And finally, we're at The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. Released in 2015 by CDPR, marked a pivotal advancement in open-world RPG design through its seamless integration of the massive scale of the open world, narrative depth, and player agency. The game transitioned from the linear political focus of prior entries to a leap featuring a massive open world populated by dynamic ecosystems and interconnected regions like Valen, Novigrad, and Skilge. I hope I said that right. This scale supported a fully realized RPG system, including branching dialogues, romance options, and faction alignments that influenced quest outcomes and endings. High-budget presentation with photorealistic visuals powered by their in-house engine and an amazing score, which maintained narrative intimacy amid spectacle. Let's just say that The Witcher 3 was balling on a blank check, showing what CDPR could do with a lot of resources. The story continued to center on Geralt at peak maturity, evolving from a wandering monster hunter to a father figure in the search of his adopted daughter Ciri. Which is cool and all, but what really hooked me about The Witcher 3 were the side quests. The side quests reached numbers of over 200, with some of them rivaling the main quest lines in scope and writing quality, such as the Bloody Baron arc, spanning about 10 hours with moral dilemmas. The monster contracts transformed hunts into full stories. For instance, the botching contract reveals a noble's tragic family history through environmental cues and beast lore. There was also integrated environmental storytelling, where abandoned villages, war-torn swamps, and Nilfgaardian camps narrate the continent's lore without exposition dumps, showing that developers can make side quests in an open world game actually fun and not mundane or repetitive. This design encouraged organic exploration, with dynamic weather and NPC schedules enhancing the immersion. Player actions yielded consequences. Aiding a beggar in Novigrad might spawn grateful informants later, while ignoring a village curse leads to an annihilation of that village. The combat had refined the series' formula, with directional attacks, signs, and dodging achieving fluid gameplay. Streamlined alchemy simplified potion crafting to meditation-based rep, yet it maintained its depth from the other games. There is also Gwent, introduced as a tavern diversion which became accidentally iconic, spawning a standalone game in 2018 with over 1 million downloads. And the expansions, like Heart of Stone, which was a 10-hour-long story, and Blood on Wine, which was 30 hours long, adding on what the game already had, which was more than enough. The Witcher 3 will always be the greatest game of all time to me, no matter what, because of everything. There isn't one part of The Witcher 3 I feel like was wasted. Everything felt intentional, purposeful, and very worth your time. The Witcher 3 didn't just improve the formula from the previous games, it perfected it and then did some more just to show it wasn't a fluke. The Witcher series exemplifies iterative game design, where each title addresses shortcomings of its predecessor while amplifying core strengths. The enhanced edition of The Witcher established a distinctive identity rooted in moral ambiguity and Slavic-inspired fantasy lore. The Witcher 2: Assassins of Kings shifted focus to intricate choice and consequence systems, responding to criticism of linear progression in the first game. The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt expanded to an unprecedented scale, with emotional depth, building on feedback regarding scope and narrative payoff. This progression reflects CDPR's public adaptation to player and critic input, a rarity in the industry. The studio's transparency through patches, interviews, and sequels demonstrates learning from failures. And not just failures, just shortcomings. Sometimes you could do something well, but still, you could do it better. And The Witcher series shows that. CDPR's approach contrasts with studios that pivot genres or ignore feedback, positioning the trilogy as a benchmark for responsive development. The Witcher series pioneered RPG storytelling by getting rid of binary good or evil choices for nuance. Gray areas, consequence-heavy decisions shape the world. In The Witcher 3, over 36 possible endings to the main storyline emerge from interconnected choices, redefining player investment beyond combat. This approach influenced titles like Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda. Yikes, those are some rough comparisons. The Witcher series is a rare example of visible growth. Witcher 1 established the soul. Witcher 2 refined choice and consequences. Witcher 3 perfected everything. Each game directly responds to criticism from the last and answers it well. And that's why the jump from Witcher 3 to Witcher 1 felt so extreme, because it was over a decade of learning. But what do you think? Which Witcher game is your favorite? Like I said before, Witcher 3 is my favorite. Let me know down in the comments down below. And please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. See you in the next one.